Okay, so get this. Did you know that India's total fertility rate has officially dropped to 2.0? Right, that is actually below the replacement level of 2.1. And this brings us to a really fascinating central paradox. India's population is still on its way to peaking, yet at the exact same time, we're actively stabilizing our fertility. It's a massive demographic shift, and honestly, it changes absolutely everything about our future. Namaste, aspirants. Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a highly critical topic that is directly aligned with your General Studies Paper 3 syllabus, India's demographic transition. Look, whether you're analyzing economic development, social justice, or resource management, understanding these population dynamics is absolutely essential for your mains preparation. So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at population trends, regional divides, key population theories, the aging challenge, and finally, rounding it all out with policies and conclusion. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Population Trends. Now, you might have heard some alarmist rhetoric about a sudden population collapse. Well, the data totally dispels that myth. It's really a story of stabilization, not collapse. According to the UN's World Population Prospects, India's population is going to peak at about 1.7 billion in the second half of this century before gradually returning to near today's levels by 2100. Plus, if we look at the National Family Health Survey, or NHS-5, it brilliantly shows that the fertility gap between highly educated and less educated women is actually narrowing. So those extreme predictions of depopulation, they're probably overestimating future declines. We're stabilizing. Moving right along to Section 2, Regional Divides. So, the crucial point here, and examiners love this, is the stark contrast in demographic realities between our regions. Take the southern states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh. They experienced an early fall in fertility. Because of this, their overall population share is actually decreasing. For example, Tamil Nadu's share of India's population dropped from 7.5% back in 1971 to around 6% in the 2011 census. But with reduced fertility came greater investments in human capital, leading to a rising share in India's GDP. Conversely, northern states are experiencing later fertility stabilization, which means they have a higher ongoing population share. From an administrative standpoint, this creates a really complex scenario for future democratic representation and the delimitation of parliamentary seats. It's going to require a very careful, balanced approach from policymakers to ensure true federal equity. Which brings us to Section 3, Key Population Theories. Listen, this theoretical framework is an absolute goldmine for your mains answers. It gives you the exact academic terminology you need to stand out. First up is the classic Malthusian theory from 1798. Thomas Malthus argued that food production increases arithmetically, 1, 2, 3, 4, while population increases geometrically, like 2, 4, 8, 16. If left unchecked, boom, you hit a crisis. He proposed preventive checks like late marriage and warned of positive checks like famine and disease. But as a critical analytical point for your exam, you have to note his big blind spot. Malthus didn't foresee technological progress. India's own Green Revolution is the perfect example of how innovation in healthcare and agricultural productivity completely disprove this overly pessimistic theory. Next is the demographic transition theory, developed by Warren Thompson. This maps out 5 stages of societal development, starting with Stage 1, which has high birth and death rates, all the way to Stage 5, which sees an aging, declining population. Think Japan. So where exactly does India sit on this timeline? Well, we're currently in late Stage 3, edging into early Stage 4. Our death rates are low, and with that TFR of 2.0, our birth rates are now falling below the replacement level. Pinpointing this exact transition phase in your essays shows examiners you truly grasp the demographic data. And let's quickly hit 3 more essential theories you can leverage. The theory of optimum population suggests there's a perfect Goldilocks population size that maximizes per capita income without overstressing resources. Then we have the demographic dividend theory, or Jananakiyalab hunch, which is huge for us right now. India has a staggering 66% of its population in the working age group of 15 to 59 years. UN estimates say this dividend window is going to stay open for us until about 2040 to 2055. But, and this is where the theory of human capital steps in, that dividend only translates to actual economic growth if we heavily focus on education, healthcare, and skill development. Without human capital, a demographic dividend can flip into a demographic liability real quick.
All right, heading into Section 4, the aging challenge.
Guys, we are facing a massive, unavoidable shift. Just look at the numbers. In 2021, the elderly population, anyone aged 16 above, was at 11%. By 2051, that number is projected to leap to nearly 28%. That is a huge jump. Think about the socioeconomic implications of that. A rapidly rising old age dependency ratio, soaring demands for elderly care services, and just intense pressure on our healthcare and pension systems. But hey, this doesn't have to be some catastrophic crisis. We can reframe this into a totally manageable economic transition. How? Well, first, by drastically increasing female labor force participation. Bringing more women into the workforce scales up our labor pool to offset the aging workers. Second, we have got to leverage artificial intelligence, automation, and digital technologies. Even with a shrinking proportion of young workers, adopting advanced tech can exponentially improve individual labor productivity to balance the scales. Finally, let's wrap it up with Section 5, Policies and Conclusion. Let's tie the whole shebang into actionable, syllabus-ready interventions. Over the years, India has fundamentally shifted its approach. We've moved away from coercive population control, Jansankhya Niyantran, and pivoted towards empowerment, health, and voluntary stabilization. Look at some of the key government schemes. You've got Mission Parivar Vikas, enhancing access to modern contraceptives, Poshan Abhiyan, tackling maternal and child nutrition, the Skill India Mission, equipping our workforce for changing tech, and the National Program for Healthcare of the Elderly, which is directly anticipating the exact aging transition we just talked about. To summarize, if you want to write that perfectly structured, balanced conclusion in your exam, here are your 4 core policy priorities. 1. Adopt evidence-based policies, ignoring the alarmist rhetoric about population explosions or collapses. 2. Create safer, flexible workplaces to really boost that female labor force. 3. Build robust infrastructure for universal healthcare and elderly social security. And 4, ensure delimitation reforms are very carefully balanced to protect both democratic representation and federal equity. And that brings us to the end of today's explainer. But honestly, this is where your active learning begins. Here is your daily mains practice question, pulled straight from the core of today's analysis. Discuss the implications of declining fertility, aging population, and regional demographic disparities for India's socioeconomic development. I highly challenge you to take the data, the theories, and the policy steps we just mapped out and construct a comprehensive answer. How will you connect the dots between Tamil Nadu's GDP, the Malthusian theory, and India's demographic dividend? Until next time, keep studying, keep analyzing, and keep focused.